I got here in 2001 and started talking to some of the local recreational and commercial fishermen and other people in a group called the Cape York Marine Advisory Group, and they were telling me about how they'd seen a lot of changes over the past 15, 20 years in water quality and in some things along fringing reefs dying back, and they were concerned about the water. So we started a volunteer water monitoring project initially in the Annan and the Endeavour rivers, and those places were going to have a mine moving in and a new sewage treatment plant. So we were trying to get some baseline data before those things happened and be able to see what impact. So this is after the mine, and so we did see some changes, obviously. This is right downstream from where the mine runoff is coming in here, and this is the nice clean river upstream. And one of our community volunteers who's not very happy, obviously, so we did have a community meeting after this and met with the mine and the EPA, and the mine was forced to improve their practices. This is at that same site. We then, years later, trained the Jabobina Rangers, the traditional owners in that area, who continue that monitoring, whatever it is, 15 years later. They're still monitoring the mine impacts at that site and are finally this year going to be helping with the cleanup of the mine. In 2006, we moved out of the Annan Endeavour to the Lower Normanby with some federal funding, and so this is our mobile lab that we set up, and we drive around the Normanby catchment for about 3 days every month, sampling places where we thought there were impacts the community was concerned about, and just trying to actually find out what was going on in the river and get some good data. This is just below Lakeland here. We were able to obviously show that there were some serious nutrient impacts in the Lakeland area. And from all this data, set some water quality guidelines, and even just recently some targets for how to try and improve that water quality and what we want to try and get it back to. This is that Normanby program continuing. We put in all sorts of fancy devices because you can't get to these sites in the wet season, and so there's Sue retrieving some passive samplers that we'd left in over the wet season, and this is Ted retrieving Sue with our health and safety rope. Working in Cape York is extremely challenging, and this is about $2,000 worth of equipment that was gone after a flood. We went back to retrieve it a few months later, and all we had was a broken chain. So this is these are our not happy faces, but we learned a lot, and thanks to the incredible community support with people like Ted and Sue and traditional owners and landowners, we were able to go places and do things that no scientists had ever been able to do in Cape York before. This is our Seaplane Expedition up to the mouth of the Normanby River. We landed right in this spot right here with a huge bang and a Jesus Christ out of the pilot, which was not a good thing. Sorry to the children and Chappie. That was the pilot. So we then decided a helicopter was a better option. Actually, the pilot refused to go back again, so we moved to helicopter sampling and have never looked back. We have continued to go all over Cape York doing things in flood time that we would never be able to do. And of course, in the flood is when things are happening in Cape York and things are moving in the water. So we started up a monitoring program by helicopter going to some of our more remote locations. This is the mouth of the Genie River. And we'd go every 3 months to the Normanby estuary, the Genie River, and the Muck River up at Bathurst Bay and start getting baseline data and just trying to figure out what is the water quality in these areas and what's impacting on them. But it wasn't all about water. We also set up a seagrass monitoring program out at Arches Point. This is with the Cooktown State School science class, and we started that in 2002 and did quarterly monitoring, and that's still going with the Yukubaja Rangers in the corner who are still monitoring that site. This is a seagrass monitoring project. We then expanded all over the Cape, and this is the Napranum Rangers we trained to monitor seagrass, and we'd go up there and help them every few months. And they were concerned about their seagrass getting some too much dirt from the dredging at Weipa, and so we wanted to see if it was coming back. We then were hearing from everyone all over the Cape that they were concerned about their wetland health and the pigs and the cattle, and so we designed a wetland monitoring program that would actually be relevant to Cape York wetlands, and we trialed it all over Cape York wetlands, and this is Jack Lakes, and a way to quantify the health of the wetlands, the impacts from pigs and cattle and erosion and all sorts of things. And Then trained, we did this all, with ranger groups. This is the Mapoon Rangers, and they continue to monitor their wetlands up in the Mapoon area. And there's ranger groups all over Cape York now, Kawanyama, Pumparao, all around here, who are monitoring their wetlands using these methods. And moving on to the Mapoon Rangers are monitoring the amount of water in their sacred springs, because they're very concerned about the bauxite mining, moving closer and closer to Mapoon, extracting the bauxite, which potentially will reduce the amount of water flowing into those springs. So they're now monitoring the water flow in those springs. The Lower Rangers have been my star partners for many years, and they continue to help monitoring the floods in the Normanby catchment. And this is now turning into a PhD project for me, so I'm busy writing up all this data as we speak and setting water quality guidelines and still monitoring the rivers. We've evolved from the early days with really basic equipment to this $30,000 piece of equipment that CSIRO lends us, and we've got one in the mouth of the Pasco, the Normanby, the Annan, and we're hoping to install about 10 more devices between now and December at the mouths of various rivers that have never been monitored before. Nobody knew what was going out to the reef from any of these rivers in Cape York. They assumed they were pristine. They're not. Some of them are close to pristine. A lot of them are not. And so we've really disproved the initial assumptions about Cape York rivers and are making it difficult for the government to ignore Cape York now. We've set water quality guidelines for all of East Coast rivers thanks to a lot of this data, and have now most recently formed a water monitoring partnership with all these organizations that have been doing various projects monitoring wetlands and seagrass and rivers, and we're coming together to try to form a really strong voice to continue to improve the monitoring we're doing and bring more resources and attention to Cape York, not just so that we can monitor, but so that we can show what's going on, so that we can show if there's change over the years. We know that there are more mines and more roads and more cattle and more farming moving in, and we want to be able to actually show the external organizations, the government, where those changes, how those changes are impacting our aquatic environments, and be able to actually document that so that we can get the appropriate resources to manage it properly.